I'm ChosenArchitect, and this is All the Mods Sin. Now today is episode 40, and that means every 10 episodes I put out a world download. So that means today is World Download Day. So that means if you're a supporter on Patreon, on Twitch, over here on YouTube as a YouTube member, or through the Discord, becoming a Discord premium member, definitely be sure to get your world download today. The world downloads are handled through the Discord, so be sure to link your accounts to your Discord and check it out, links down in the description below. So of course, have fun exploring my world and playing around with all the neat little gadgets that are within it. And with that, it's now time to get on with today's episode. Now today's episode is going to be one of the most stressful episodes that I will record throughout the entire series here. And that's because it deals with radiation and the potential to blow up parts of our base. But it also comes with some reward if we set it up correctly. For one, we'll be able to produce antimatter, which is going to be required for the All the Mods star towards the end. But it also is going to allow us to get into more advanced things within Mekanism, but ultimately will allow us to produce some really nice power, with the ultimate goal of producing insanely vast amounts of power in the future. And that, my friends, is going to be getting into the fission reactor today, and also the steam turbine, which is going to help us generate some power. Now, I'm not going to be doing this in the traditional sense, where you essentially loop water into your turbine and then loop the water back, basically recycling your steam, turning it back into water and sending it back in. But we are going to be utilizing our steam today. Because we have infinite supplies of water and we can infinitely send water to our fission reactor, I say that it's probably going to be best to make it safer by making sure we always have water, and then we just worry about our steam, later. Now, of course, this will all make sense once we get these multi-blocks up, but what I have done is I have finished up all of the rooms. So all of these rooms now exist. You can see them clear as day right here, and I added in the remainder of the rooms over here. So I have plans on this side right here, where I have holes in the floor. I have plans on setting up the fission reactor here, setting up steam turbine right here, and then utilizing these rooms essentially for processing of our different materials, which we're going to have to worry about. And the processing of the different materials is also concerning because you have to be very delicate with everything, because if you place in, for example, a pipe that contains polonium, you're not going to be able to break that without radiating your base. So we have to be very precise with the way we set up everything, and we have to kind of think about everything beforehand. I'm sure at least one of you has made a mistake before in the past and irradiated your base. Of course, if you have, you should comment down below if you have done that in the past. Guarantee there's going to be a handful, if not more. Also, if you've irradiated your base, you should probably click this like button, because I'm going to show you how to not irradiate your base. So now let's get started with the production of a fission reactor. So we have to kind of think about this fission reactor, but we don't have to think about it all that much, because thankfully there's an add-on in here that kind of shows us everything we need to know. If we look at a component that is involved in the fission reactor production, for example, this control rod assembly, and we hit U on it, we can take a look at the building the fusion reactor here with this beautiful add-on, Just Enough Mechanism multi-blocks. This is so useful because we can define a certain height, and we can define how much burn rate we are going to potentially give this, and it spits out a ton of information. And this information is really useful if we want to build a turbine, for example, that can cope with the amount of, for example, fissile fuel that we're going to be sending this thing. So we can kind of play with this and figure out what's a good size here. Now, I think ultimately it wouldn't be bad to build a 9x9x18, but let's say I wanted to make this smaller. Let's say I wanted to make this a 7x7x18. Well, you can see that the max burn rate is dramatically changed. For example, I can only go up to 195 millibuckets on the burn rate before it starts to go into critical. And this all tells me that right here. So this is an 18 block tall, 7 height, 7 width. Now the max size you can go is 18x18x18. I want to kind of fit it inside of this area. So going 18 tall is perfectly fine with me, but the width I do have to kind of keep in mind. So 7x7 wouldn't be too bad. Getting up to 195 millibuckets per tick is going to be pretty difficult anyways to get that production, considering whenever we max out our setup that we have going right now, it's really only producing like 156 millibuckets per tick. So honestly, a 7x7 would be fine. If I ever needed to increase this, I can always bring it up to a 9x9x9. So I'm thinking, let's go 7x7x7. And what we'll see if we set this to the exact burn rate that I plan on setting it to, for example, 150, we will then be able to we'll be able to see our water production rate. So water heating rate, which I assume will be how much steam is being produced. And you can see all of this other information here, but I'm hoping that this is the actual steam production rate off of that burn. So we see water heating rate and we'll have 750 buckets per tick. Now, if I go over to a turbine blade, I can actually build a turbine and view our results that reflect this and are able to technically handle this. Now, there's a lot of ways you can build a turbine. Honestly, building it this size with a width of 5 and a height of 9 is going to be a pretty decent turbine. You can see, though, we do have some water restrictions. If we go up to a 7x9, this does change a little bit, but it does require a ton more material to do this. Now, I think we're going to be just fine. You can see the maximum water output rate is more than enough. We're going to actually be voiding the water that's output from here, but our flow rate in looks like it's 1,280 buckets, basically. So that's per tick. That's going to be very, very fast and should easily be able to keep up. Cool thing about this, it shows us all the materials that we're going to need for this, which is very nice. And I'm going to show you how to build both of these things. Now, believe me, I'm not perfect in these setups, and I will not be building the most optimal quote unquote way, because even to this day, I still am not the best at understanding how these all rates flow together. Because typically I play games to, well, play games, not play Math Simulator. Now, thankfully, I also don't have to calculate how many we're going to need for this whole thing. I set my logic adapter ports, which you're going to want 5 of them. And basically it does all of the math for me. So I'm able to request all of these basically indefinitely here. Oh, this is going to be so nice. So if we go into Mekanism, I've already built up the patterns for this, like reactor glass, for example. We're going to need 361 reactor glass to build this. Oh, wait. Do we really need enriched iron for this? Oh, this is a new recipe, I think. I don't ever remember this requiring enriched iron. Which is actually a process of making steel that I didn't set up because, well, we have steel seeds. See, the patterns for it's quite simple. We'll do 8 to 1. This is just like most of the other ones. I'm also going to need 195 of these fission fuel assemblies. These are going to go in the center of the reactor. Gosh, it's so fast. Then 13 of the rods. This is going to be a little bit slower because it's got to craft up the components for it. And then I'm going to need, what was it? I think 112 of the fission reactor casings. So this is how we're going to build this out. Remember, it's a 7x7. So we're going to have our 3x3 here, and we're going to go out 2. And this is going to be the size of our reactor. Basically just like so, building this all out. This is going to be the floor of it. And then we can use things like building gadgets to definitely make this a little bit easier to get all of this put together. Main thing to note, this is going to be 18 blocks tall, which is why I built these rooms so tall. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18 blocks tall, the max height you can build this thing. Like I said, you can build it up to an 18 by 18 by 18. But honestly, getting that burn rate up to that point, very, very difficult, requiring a ton of space. And really, we don't need that much. Also, the more machines we place in, the laggier things get, especially on a server. So I have a tendency to usually build small because of that reason. Like, the more things I place in the world, ultimately, the more TPS I'm losing towards everything else, slowing the entirety of the world down. This is interesting. Like, it told me I was going to need 112 for this size, a 7x7 by 18, but it doesn't actually appear that way. Like, I've already ran out of the reactor casings. Oh, you know what? I bet it tried to place reactor casings on the floor, and instead of using reactor, like the solids for the floor, it tried to use the reactor glass for the floor. I wonder, can you use reactor glass on the floor? Like, that actually might be a thing. I typically like to have that be solid and let the walls be that way. So either way, this is how I plan on going about it. Now, for the center point, it's always best to do it like this, where you have like a grid pattern, where you start in the center and we fill this out just like this. So we should end up with 13 here. Hence why we only needed 13 control rod assemblies. Now, of course, I can use construction sticks, but I really love the animations on the building gadget. So yeah, I'm going this way all the way. Now, I did go up a little bit too much because these control rods right here, they actually need to be like one under the casing. They do not stick out like in extreme reactors or bigger reactors. So now with all of these in, we can start to place our casings on top, and technically we can go ahead and fill the entire structure in with glass. Remember, this can't be structural glass. No, this has to be reactor glass. A little bit different, but yes, may catch you off guard if you accidentally fill the whole thing with structural glass. Now for this, using a construction stick, which by the way is pretty cool, you can set your keybinds for this so that way you can use it just like the original like construction ones. It has an undo button and everything, but in this case, I just want it to work as per normal, and it will allow me to build this all the way up super fast. Now, as soon as I finish this, it should complete the structure, even though we don't have any inputs or anything on it. This is a completed reactor. Now, of course, we are going to want to use a input to, for example, feed it fission or fizzle fuel. So fizzle fuel on the front input port, and then we're gonna need a way to send water to this. We're also gonna need to do a way to send steam out. Now the steam I want to send to this room, so it makes a lot of sense for me to put the steam port or the output port right here for steam. There we go. And then we're going to want water somewhere. I typically like to have water on the opposite side of the steam. So we can put that right here. And then in the very back is where I usually like to handle the waste. Now to change all of this, we can shift right click on here with our configurator. And you'll see this is put to output waste, which is what we want on that side. This will be output coolant, which is going to be steam. And then on this side, it just needs to stay green as an input only. And then same over here for fizzle fuel input only. Perfect. Now that wasn't bad, now was it? So before we put anything in here and we start working with this, we need to set up our fail-safes. And I always love to preface this. This is one of the most important parts, and honestly is what will prevent, hopefully, your reactor from exploding. And that is all handled by simply using the Redstone reactor logic adapters. These things are very, very important. And so the way that we're going to use these is we have 4 different states that we want to use these adapters to check. So we're going to have 4 separate locations right here. And then right down below this, right here, we can go ahead and have a actual shut off. So this is what's going to control everything. So inside of here, we have the activation of the reactor. That's what we're going to want. Now for all of these, we're going to want to essentially send a redstone signal. And we're going to want to check, and if temperatures are too high, send a redstone signal. On this one, if critical waste levels are too high, they hit above 90%, I want it to send a redstone signal. Same on this, critical damage, send a redstone signal. And then same, insufficient fuel, if there's not enough fuel, go ahead and shut it off as well. Now, by default, our activation state is kind of backwards. It says activate the reactor when powered and deactivate when unpowered. So that means we need to have a constant signal to this to send it and make sure it's on. But whenever these are detecting something bad, well, they emit a redstone signal. And if this is already receiving a redstone signal, then it's going to still stay on. So instead, what we need to do is we need to use something called a NOT gate, which is basically an inverted redstone signal, right? So that way the incoming redstone can shut this off. And thankfully, there's some really easy tools in this pack that make this super straightforward. Now, the mod that I want to use to control the redstone on this is not vanilla. No. It's going to be the more red mod. And yes, I did try the redstone pin. The redstone pin mod, unfortunately, doesn't like to work on the sides of these things for some reason, whereas the more red actually does. Notice, by the way, I can place this redstone there. It's detecting this is actually emitting. But the redstone pin mod, for some reason, it just doesn't take that redstone signal off the side. So with more red, we just need a NOT gate, and that's a super simple thing, right? Because it's just called a NOT gate in this mod instead of like an inverted redstone relay, right? So here we go. So this just emits a redstone signal solid out the side, and then we can use this to send the redstone directly to the adapter right now. And you can see the status is powered, meaning that it would technically be in activation mode, which is perfect. And then over here, as soon as we give this a signal like that, And of course, we want this whole line to be signaled. It will then shut off, and you can now see that it is idle. So this would mean that if the reactor was on, it should automatically get shut off. Well, it's going to get automatically shut off whenever this pulse does change. So if I change this, placing this on should shut the reactor off, and you can see that it is now technically off. I've got to admit, this is a really, really clean way of doing this. Now, I honestly hope that part wasn't too confusing, because that ultimately should help your reactor not blow up. So now for the most important thing that goes inside this reactor, water. And we're going to need a ton of water if we're not planning on recycling it with steam. So to do this, we do have the mods in here capable of doing this. And the mod that's going to allow us to do this is going to be integrated dynamics. And a few episodes ago, I ended up setting up enough stuff to get integrated dynamics up and running. So we're going to need just a few things from this mod if we're going to be handling fluids. And thankfully, this is a part of integrated tunnels, which allows us to send items and fluids and stuff like that through our integrated systems. Now, the parts that I'm most interested in is a fluid interface, which is also going to be required for a exporter. And so I'm going to be using a fluid interface and a simple exporter for this. We are going to need variable cards, which are important for this setup. And we're going to need an outputter. So this is very, very simple, just like so. And honestly, just some crafting stuff. Now, integrated can be kind of scary, but we're not going to be messing with really anything that's out of the ordinary, right? We're not going to be making crazy variable cards and detectors or anything like that. We're just simply going to be using an interface to act as a central network for our water. And so right here is going to be where our sink resides. And so we're also going to need a pipe. Let's go ahead and grab the logic cable here. And so what we can do is we can place a logic cable right here. We can place down a fluid interface, which is going to act as the network of our water. And then we're going to place a fluid exporter. Now, by default, nothing is going to happen, but we want it to be set to export all fluids. And we can go ahead and set this. And by default, a variable card works like a true or false. It's a Boolean value. So when we put this in, it should start sending water in. But that's not fast enough. No, no, no. So the way that we're going to get this water very fast is by going into this channel properties button. And when we do this, we can travel all the way over to fluid transfer rate. And this is where things get a little broken. We just place 9s in here until we get a X right here. And then we just go back 1. This right here is the maximum value that we can transfer water at. And believe me, it's more than enough to transfer. And so now, as soon as I put this card in, this whole thing is going to basically instantly fill up with water. Now, another huge reason as to why this actually works is because of how these actually work. So they operate every tick by default, and you can go underneath the part settings and you can see tick operations is by default set to 1. So this is why this works every single tick. Both of these are set up that way, and that's default. And this could also lead to some problems on servers if you set up very large integrated dynamic systems. So while integrated is very, very good when it comes to like sending items and fluids and things like that, and you have a ton of these up and running, yeah, you can really start to cripple things with that 1 tick on every operation setting. So perfect. Now that we have that up and running, there's a couple of other things we're going to have to worry about if we were to turn this on. And that is going to be our waste management and how we're going to handle that, and also our steam management. And so before I even build a reactor or anything, it's probably best that we set up solutions for handling both of those things. And we're going to turn our waste into polonium and plutonium both. Now, as much as I would love to use like Applied Energistics to handle the sending of the waste, unfortunately, it does require polonium pellets to be able to even do this in the first place. So honestly, it just makes sense to just handle it by default when it comes to at least the processing of our polonium and plutonium. So now let's talk about handling this setup. And this is honestly a really, really straightforward way of processing plutonium and polonium. So we will need a isotropic centrifuge. Basically, this is going to be used for handling our plutonium production. So to make the plutonium, we need an isotropic centrifuge being sent nuclear waste, which is what our fission reactor is going to work for. And this is going to produce that. So we want to split this, and on the other side, we're going to make polonium pellets. So polonium is also done in a PRC. That's why we have a PRC down here. And this is done with a solar neutron activator. However, this does need it to be daytime. So you are going to have to make sure that you have a direct path all the way up to skylight with nothing in its way, or this will not work. So very, very important to make sure that you have this set up. So there we go. And we're probably going to also want to automate the process of making it eternally day. Something that we'll definitely need to do. While not 100% necessary, it will help to balance this whole setup out. Now, once you place these and you get this going in, you don't want to break these. Just control them by turning on the redstone or turning off the machine with redstone. Outside of that, we are almost done. Now, this is going to produce a actual waste product that is pretty nasty once this is all said and done. And that is going to be spent nuclear waste. So yes, we're going to have to deal with that. But first, let me talk about this, for example. I went ahead and I just canceled every other output that this machine had, and I just made sure that it was outputting to the machine that we want it connected to for both of these, and making sure it was inputting from both sides here. Now, the PRC, to be able to make these pellets, we're going to need fluorite dust, and to get fluorite dust, we can use a crusher. This is pretty straightforward, and I can use my applied energistics to send this to this crusher. These are also going to need water in order to run. So another thing we're going to need is water, and all of this is going to be sent with a cable directly into here from our applied energistics system. So yeah, we can go ahead and do that right now. These are going to be outputting water. So we can say water is what's going to be coming in on this side, and water is also going to be coming in on this side from our infinite water source. And then right here in the middle, that is going to be receiving fluorite and is going to be crushing that down. We're of course going to want to upgrade this, but this is outputting the crushed fluorite to both sides. And that's something that over time will balance itself out, especially when it's upgraded. Now, both of these are going to automatically send out polonium and plutonium pellets. So we want to make sure we have a place to send them. I'm going to send them directly into our dimensional chest. And this is almost done. Like I said, we still, however, have to manage all of that waste. And instead of me finding some clever way to kind of get rid of it, I don't know, that might get patched in the future, I'm just simply going to use the way that's intended and utilize a bunch of these radioactive waste barrels that will just over time decay them. You'll see 2 millibuckets will decay every 10 ticks. Now, this may be a weird design for this, but I wanted to kind of be able to see the sort of radioactive barrels. Normally I hide them, but in this setup here, essentially we're going to have glass that lets you look down into this. And I have a little bit over 64 of them in here, enough to fill in these bottom rows. But if I go ahead and extend out like a pipe, like this pressurized tube, for example, it's going to run down the center from here. But of course it is going to be connected to all of these. So just by showing you here, this is going to run just like this into all of them. And it is going to go onto the top, but it's also going to go into the middle here too. And this may seem a little strange, but that's because you could technically output from the bottom of these barrels. But really the only place this is going to go whenever it's connected like this is straight into the top of this next row of barrels. And we're going to want a lot because I just want to make sure that it is decaying, and eventually will decay all of it as we continue to make a bunch of waste. So now after a little bit of design work, oh, it looks really good. Even though this is just for a bunch of waste, it really does start to kind of give off the vibe though of what I've been going for this whole time. So now I just need to make sure that our waste can make it over here. I don't want to connect it up just yet, but I do want to go ahead and run this line. And also these pipes, by the way, will end up giving us a nice backlog on storage, but because of our setup, we shouldn't have to worry about that. All of this is going to get ran all the way over and should connect right up into this setup. Now just make sure that your connections to this bottom section are not connected up to your waste tanks. Like that needs to be completely separate, AKA don't cross your cables. Now, if all of that wasn't complicated enough, we're going to be now working on steam. So I need to route steam over into here. I think I'm going to have this side being the inlet, and that means that connected right down here on the output for our liquid, we actually want to use pipes. So steam is actually handled through these tubes as well as a chemical, technically, as a gas. And so we're going to move this all the way over to here. And I want it to pop up through this hole. So there we go. We just need to get these all nice and connected up. Now let's go ahead and build the turbine here. So it is going to be a 5x5x9 as defined right here, 5 with a 9 tall So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is not the biggest you can make this. I actually don't know the exact maximum. I guess this would define that, right? If the 5 being the width, this could go all the way up to 17. It looks like this can go all the way up to 18. So 17 by 18, I would assume. But for our uses here and the size of our reactor, this is going to be more than enough. And we should be able to use this, yeah, to easily generate a bit of power. Now, I'm just building this according to the setup here. So we are going to need 5 rotors basically going in the middle. And I do kind of have an idea of how this is supposed to be shaped out. For example, the top of the rotor needs to go into what's called a rotational complex right here. And then around this, we actually need to put pressure dispersers. So this is like sort of the setup that goes around this central rotational complex. Then on top of the rotational complex, the way we're going to get our power is through the electromagnetic coils. And in our build here, we're going to need 2 of them. And so we can connect them like so. And then around this, to get water back, we're going to use saturating condensers. And now because of this size, this particular size would not be suitable for making sure we're guaranteeing all of our water back. This would have a loss in water being sent back. So if you're just using this for power like I am, this one's just fine. But if you are using it to get your water back, I would recommend building it 1 size larger. So you would basically expand this out to a 7 by 7 by 9. And then we just need to use turbine vents and make sure this whole thing is surrounded with turbine vents. Like this should work, I think. I may be wrong on the pressure dispersers having turbine vents on them, but I know the whole top can have turbine vents. Yeah. Let's see. We'll have this right here. So we'll have 1 face that we're going to have to kind of exchange. So I'm going to use this. And what I'll do is I'll place these here. And then we'll have room for valves technically too, right? So you know what? This right here could be a perfect place for a valve. So yeah, I think this will work. Turbine valve here. We'll have another casing right here and a turbine valve here, and that levels everything out perfectly. And then we just need to put our blades on. So we just right click this until all of our blades are used up. And there's our turbine blades. And then again, we'll just fill this, however, with structural glass, not reactor glass. And that should form our full multi-block. Now a moment of truth, if all is correct, there we go. It should form. And it did. Very, very nice. So now we can see all of the information right here. So now I think all we need to do is go ahead and get our tube connected up here into the side, just like so. So that's going to be steam going in. And thankfully, it does seem like there is a, it says water will not be recycled. That's dumping excess. Like, I think that is kind of what we want. We want to dump excess steam, but I'm not sure if for this setup, it says water will not be recycled. That's interesting. Like, I don't necessarily want it recycled. And this is dumping steam. Yeah, I think dump excess is exactly what we want. If this does not produce water, then we can use this port over here, for example, as like an output for our power instead of for water. So I think this right here is going to be perfect. Now I did go ahead and put my applied energistics up here so that way we can tap power into this. I just need to drag some cables down and we will be ready to go. I think we're almost ready to fire this reactor up. Now, the way I want to send power in is through this means right here, a flux accessor. I think that this will send out the power like it would auto send out the water, but we're going to have to kind of keep an eye on it and actually see if that's the case. If not, we'll have to pipe into this. Okay, so I think we're just about ready. We now have water going in here. The only thing we need to do now is make sure we send fissile fuel in here and make sure we have a place for our waste to go and get our cables connected up for waste. So moment of truth, let's pull out our fissile fuel. So fissile fuel is going to go in here, and then I'm going to go ahead and get the cable connected. This should start to fill with fissile fuel, and it's going to automatically kick on, and it is running right now, but it is on a really low burn rate, so we shouldn't see any issues, but it might let us kind of see like if we're producing steam and where our waste is actually going, because it should be producing a little bit of that. So it's definitely producing waste. You can hear this over here. Now this I do not have connected to power yet. The solar neutron doesn't actually require power, but it does appear like this is technically building up a little bit, which is good. That's exactly what we want to see. Okay, so that's working. Now the turbine, on the other hand, we should see steam building up in here, but I do not see that. If I turn this off to idle, I don't see that either. And to get rid of that awful hum, just search mechanism right here, and this is what you'll find. I like just setting it to at least 1 to know that it's running. But yeah, the mechanism generators right here. Okay, so fissile fuel slowly building up. I don't see steam building up yet, but steam is in our pipe here. Okay, so this is taking power. It is producing power right now. Oh, interesting. So it's producing about 658 FE per tick, and that's why we couldn't initially see that. And that's because it is actually dumping the power directly out like I was hoping it would. So now with everything running on slow rates, it's now time to, I think, start giving this a little bit more fuel to burn. So we can take this up to about 150 because that's about as much as I'm producing fissile fuel at the moment. So let's go ahead and start off small. Let's try bumping this up to a burn rate of 80. So we're going to start to see that things are going to ramp up. This is actually spinning now, and we can see the steam input right here. So we got to keep an eye out on this. And this is now starting to produce significantly more power, 571,000 FE per tick now. Thankfully, this should be able to accept that, and it should void off our power if we exceed that amount. Okay, so let's continue looking at this. I do have to keep an eye out on this if the coolant does back up, because if this technically isn't going to void power, then we're going to have to figure out another solution. But I think for right now, we are looking good. So let's continue to bump this up. This is at 80. Let's go up to 100. And we're going to slowly work our way up here. Now the burn rate is going to start to increase the temperature on our machine, and that's where things can get a little bit scary. So we have to make sure we can maintain that. So let's keep bumping it up. Let's do 110. I'm doing it in small increments so that way we don't kind of go overboard and start causing damage to our reactor. Let's try 120. It's starting to get real hot. And we're getting there. Like, the temperature's still good here, but the potential for our temperature to increase is still high. We're still providing water. Okay, let's do 130. And there we go. Still doing pretty good. And let's go all the way up to 150, which is where our maximum burn rate is currently at. Not the maximum that this reactor can do, as this can do a bit more, but the maximum that we are producing fissile fuel at the moment is about like 156 millibuckets per tick. But honestly, this is a really good rate, and we're going to start to notice our machines over here really starting to get filled with nuclear waste. So this is where we need to make sure that all of our machines are capable of handling this. And now let's take a look at this. What's this look like at 50? Okay, we now are starting to see steam input here really going up. We have still more wiggle room, but now we're producing 1 million FE per tick, easy peasy with this reactor. And so we are now producing polonium pellets and also plutonium pellets, both of which we are going to need for our future endeavors within Mekanism. So now this is what I like to see, because before we were actually losing power, but now that we got this set up, notice we are generating quite a bit of power right here. So now I just have one problem to solve, making sure it stays eternal day in our world, so that way both sides can actively run and produce both byproducts. This is for the Solon neutron activator, and to be able to do this, we can automate the daytime with ours by simply using a ritual called the Tablet of Sunrise. And we can automate this very easily with modular routers. So we'll have one modular router that's simply doing a click operation. So we'll have this one click from the front, and it is just going to simply click. That's pretty straightforward. And the other modular router also needs to click, but this one is just going to have an item inside of it that it is going to be clicking. Now, both of these need to be set to redstone pulsed mode, so that way it's not constantly clicking, it's only clicking once. And so with a little bit of redstone magic and this wonderful pulse gate, which allows us to send a signal, even if it's constant and it'll only pulse once, we can go ahead and do this. So I'm gonna actually set both of them right here. Now, the one that's doing the clicking, we want to make sure it is delayed. So we can actually delay it like this, and then we can just run some redstone from a daylight detector that's right-clicked to make it into nighttime mode. And then we need to run our redstone like so. And so what should happen is this should cause a pulse, a redstone signal pulse. Hopefully it can detect that quick pulse. And then same on this side, but a little bit later. So that way it sends in the sunrise, and then this one will just do the clicking to activate it. And we need it to be pulsed because we don't want to hold a redstone signal on here, because that will actually stop this from running temporarily. And it should almost be nighttime. We can see that the clock is almost there. And as soon as this happens, there it goes. We should see a redstone signal creeping in at just the right time. Aha. And there it goes. So perfect. So now that it has reached that threshold, this has successfully automated day. So now this entire setup can work efficiently. Now, eventually we will end up with more of the polonium pellets than we have of the plutonium pellets. And in that particular case, we can then just simply toggle this off. This waste will build up and it'll send all available waste into the isotropic centrifuge to be worked on. So just something to kind of note as of right now, I do want more of the polonium pellets technically, because that is what's used to make the SPS, which is what's going to allow us to make antimatter down the road. And also, polonium pellets are what allows the fusion reactor to be crafted. And this is kind of something that I'm really after. I love this block, as that's just where the true power resides within Mekanism, and I can't wait to set that up. But I guess you'll have to wait to see that for a future episode. So be sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already. And also, guys, give this video a huge thumbs up. These videos do take a tremendous amount of time to record and a lot of time to research. So thank you guys so much for clicking that subscribe button. And well, comment down below. What are some of your specifications for setting these reactors up? Sharing it with the community definitely helps people make better setups, and that's what we all strive to do. So guys, share that down in the comments below if you would be so kind. And with that being said, it's now time to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that amazing thanks is going to go out to Synthetic Thought. Thank you so much for your amazing support and choosing to support me over on the Discord by becoming a Discord premium member and supporting in one of the best ways possible. Also gaining access to today's world download and also many other perks over on the Discord. So thank you so very much. And guys, I want to thank you all as well. And I hope to see you in the next episode, of course. And as always, thanks for watching.